The Starfleet life with the USS Dauntless. Are you dedicated enough to be a Starfleet officer? Do you have what it takes? Greetings, everybody. I am Admiral Swart, Commanding Officer, USS Dauntless, and this is the briefing with the Admiral for Stardate -26-8777.1. And today we're going to be talking about crew evaluations. So this is going to be another practical briefing. We'll be talking about sort of nitty-gritty stuff that's relevant only to an internal audience. But what's interesting about this one, I think, is that this is not something that most crew members are going to ever be practically involved with. This is just something that kind of happens in the background every month, and then you get a report from me, and it's not necessarily obvious to anybody what's happening. So I thought it might be elucidating to open up the black box and give you a chance to see what it is that goes into the crew evaluations process and why sometimes it takes a couple of days at the end of every month, and what all goes into it and what all comes out of it. So what are crew evaluations? Why do we use that term? So crew evaluations are a term that they use in Star Trek, presumably inherited from present-day military, where the command staff, the senior staff of the crew, so of the ship, go through all the crew's monthly reports and performance appraisals and that kind of thing, and determine who is in the right position, who is deserving of advancement or recognition, and dispensing those kinds of things, making recommendations to the commanding officer, and then dispensing those recognition thingies, whatever it might be, promotions or awards or reassignments or whatever that might be. So here in the Dauntless, obviously we're not a military organization, but we have a similar kind of process where we also have things in place that recognize our personnel for their contributions that they've made to the Dauntless in terms of time and effort and energy. And we want to make sure that people have the correct recognition for the work that they've done. So it's necessary for us, that's the command staff, myself, the commanding officer, our executive officer, second officer, and assisted also by the recruiting officer and deputy recruiting officer. It's necessary for us to go through the entire crew, name by name, and make sure that everybody is getting the appropriate recognition for the work that they have done. Before we get started on that, I'd just like to greet everybody who's here. We've got Captain Van Gienen, we've got Colonel Hubert, we've got Lieutenant Kemmerly, and we've got Master Chief Kotzer and Chief Newton. Greetings, everybody. I don't see any specific comments or questions that need to be addressed yet, but that's fine. Oh, wait, here we go. Captain Van Gienen says 100 points to anyone who can say what they have noticed about each briefing. Thought I was losing it, but not. And Colonel Guerrero says, yes, it's the background. Yes, here in this area here, I have a gap on my shelf, so which I try to fill every episode with something different and interesting from my extensive Star Trek memorabilia collection. I'm hoping to find something a bit more permanent that can live in that gap in perpetuity. But for now, I haven't yet decided what's going to live on that spot in my shelf, so I try to fill it with something interesting every time. Today, it is my copy of the Player's Guide of the old Decipher Star Trek role-playing game. It was the 2D6 coder-based system, which was a lot of fun back in the day. But that's not about today. Today we're talking about crew evaluations. So what does that look like? What does that mean? So I did a briefing video a few weeks ago talking about reporting and how every member of the crew is asked and requested to submit reports, two different kinds of reports mainly. So that is your activity-based reporting, so that's reporting all the stuff that you're doing as you're doing it, and then scheduled reports, so that at the end of the month you can give kind of a summary of all the things that you've done, and that goes up through the chain of command. I'm not going to recap the full reporting description in this video, because then this video will be twice as long. So I recommend that if you haven't seen that one about reporting, you might want to, if you're watching this after the fact and you're not watching this live, you might wish to pause this video, go and watch that one first, and then come back here. However, if you're watching this live, you're just going to have to rely on your memory. I'll do my best to jog it as we go along without going into too much detail. Right. So um, all of that information that's generated through all of that reporting goes into an inbox, my inbox, the commanding officer's inbox, shared with the executive officer, and we have to then turn all of that data that we received into useful information. And the tool that we use for that is, as you might expect, a spreadsheet. Let me share that with you here. There we go. So this is the crew evaluations report. This is just the report page of the spreadsheet. The actual data looks more like this. So this is the actual crew evaluations spreadsheet that we use. Well, to be more precise, this is a copy of it where I've removed everybody's names and replaced them with crewman number 1, crewman number 2, crewman number 3, except I've left my name in there because I can give my permission to use my private information in a video like this, but I'm not going to ask every single member of the crew if I can have their permission to use their data, anything like this. So I've substituted everybody's names to anonymize the data, but this is actual live data that people have actually done. Lieutenant Kimberly says, "Are spreadsheets my one true love?" If you're talented in spreadsheets, then at the end of this video, perhaps you can offer me some tips and advice on how I can automate some of these processes, because frankly, as you'll see, a lot of this is manual. We could definitely use some assistance. Have I seen the Spreadsheet World Championships? I have not, but I'm aware it exists, but I just don't care enough about spreadsheets to actually watch that. Ops needs more spreadsheets experts, says Colonel Hubert. Absolutely. Operations does need more spreadsheets experts. We're dependent on spreadsheets here, and the more expertise we can have, the better. Right. So we ingest all of that data that's generated through all of those reports. That is the crew reports, which everybody submits every month. It looks kind of like this. It's just a list of all of the things that each crew member has done, which is submitted to their department head. The department head then collates that information into the departmental monthly status report, which looks something like that and is sent on to the executive officer. And all of those things are collected. We also collect the mission reports, which are submitted through the mission report form that looks like this. So all of those reports are collated and going to that inbox, and then we have to put all the information generated from all those reports into this spreadsheet. Lieutenant Kimberly says, I'm sorry, what, you don't care enough about spreadsheets? Disillusioned. Yes, unfortunately, although I recognize their utility as a tool, I can't bring myself to actually care very much about them, which was a problem for me back when I used to work in IT and business intelligence. The fact that I didn't care enough about them was actually a career limiting situation for me, which is why I no longer work in business intelligence. But here we are. So when somebody submits one of their reports, we can then go into this spreadsheet and populate the data. So for example, when somebody reports that in their crew report that they attended a specific mission, we can verify that by going to the mission report. This is the report form through which they submit the report. That report document then goes into a Trello board, which I'm not going to show you because anonymizing an entire Trello board is not practical for demonstration purposes. We can check in that Trello report. We verify against the roll call that the mission commander submitted as part of this form, where it says here who attended, list all Dauntless crew members who were present. We check that list, make sure that that agrees with the crew report that the member themselves submitted. If they agree, we will then increment this number in the report by 1. That person attended this mission. We'll then go and check the photographs of the mission that were submitted with the mission report. Again, right here, you can add a file. If you're a mission commander, you can submit photographs, and we can check and see if that member attended in uniform. So there we increment that one there. And also we know who commanded the mission based on who submitted the mission log report. And if the person in question commanded the mission, we can increment that number there. So we have a good count here of how many missions each member attended each month, how many missions they attended in uniform each month, and how many missions they commanded, which then calculates a running total of how many that member has done for the year. We can then put that into this monthly report and update those. We've got columns here for missions attended, missions in uniform, and missions commanded. That one's pretty straightforward, but there's an extra element to that process when we're checking through the mission reports, and that is when we have to update the promotion track documents. Each member of the Dauntless crew has a document that they can use to help keep track of the prerequisites and other requirements that they need in order to be eligible for their next rank promotion. As soon as a member joins the Dauntless, I create a document for them that looks like this. This, again, is an actual promotion track document that I've used, but I've just anonymized it, taken out the person's name, so that you can see what a live promotion track document looks like, but without giving away anybody's personal identifying information. So this person has, you can see that they started off as a crewman recruit, like most people do who join the crew. Every time they're promoted, we update the document and create a new page where they can track the prerequisites for their next rank promotion. And it keeps on going, keeps on going, keeps on going. So when we are reviewing those mission logs, we go into the latest page on the crew member in question's promotion track document. We look for the attendance requirement in the attendance roster here, and we'll add a comment where we will drop the name of the mission in question, which includes the date of the mission. So if you look back here, it's got multi-vector away mission blood donation, all hands 2024-0302. We would drop that name into this comment here so we can keep track of how many missions that person has attended here in their promotion track document. Once they have met the requirement of, in this case, 12 events, then we can tick that requirement off and we know that they have completed it. This is one of the requirements, by the way, that can be completed multiple times. So if this member had attended 24 different Dauntless events since his or her last promotion, that would count that requirement twice. So it would count twice against the 6 requirements for the next rank promotion. Master Chief Kotza says, thought, if we have a mission mobile app to report some of these mission attendants, I'm sure we can cut the admin effort down at least 30%. 100% accurate. If you are volunteering to write that app for us, then please submit a proposal for doing so. That would be fantastic. So continuing. Once we've completed those mission report processing, we've updated this spreadsheet with all of those numbers. We've updated all of the promotion trackers for each member that has participated. Then we can move on to the next step. Now, one more point before I continue. This attendance requirement is only relevant for certain members up to a certain rank. Once you've reached the rank of commander or higher, we're no longer tracking your mission attendance in your promotion tracker because it's no longer a requirement for promotion to your next rank. And it also, once you get to that rank, we're kind of assuming that you're attending a significant portion of the missions anyway. You've progressed beyond the need to track every single mission that you attend. So we're only updating those crew members' rank promotion documents for whom it is relevant. We don't bother with doing that with everybody. Okay, so mission reporting is done. Then we move on to the challenges. So we have currently, I think it's 5 or 6, depending on how you count, different challenges running every month. First one is courses completed. This is not a formal challenge, but we operate it the same way that we do the other challenges. So this counts for academy courses, so through Starfleet Educational Services, which includes Starfleet Academy and the Starfleet Marine Corps Academy, we track the number of courses that you complete during the month. This number is generated by the Starfleet database, which can be a little bit laggy and not always accurate, so we request that every member of the crew who has completed a certification through Educational Services drops a copy of your certificate into the certification channel on the Dauntless Discord so we can track it there, and also include the list in your crew report so that we can track it in that place as well. So we can verify that those numbers all agree with each other. We would also include here any other certifications that you might have accrued during the previous month. So that could be a driver's license or a snake handling certificate or a first aid certificate or anything like that. We would include that in this number here at this level. Lieutenant Kimberly says, I thought I had done absolutely loads of courses. Little did I know that some folks were in the hundreds. Yes, that does sometimes happen. Some members have a strong desire to attempt as many missions as they possibly can, and if they have a fair amount of downtime, that means that they can spend a fair amount of time working on academy courses. Numbers this high are pretty rare, though. Typically, you're looking at a dozen or 2 dozen in a month would be a pretty high number. Over 100 or approaching 200 is pretty rare, and that's quite special. Captain von Kronen says, a lot of time on their hands. I'm jealous. Yes. Yes, I'm not going to go into the circumstances of the specific individual member, but suffice to say, I don't think that they will be hitting those numbers consistently. But for a couple of months, they were able to do so, which is great for them. So once those courses are completed, we're able to update that. We don't have, again, a monthly challenge going for these courses, but we will track who did the most courses for the month so that at the end of the year, we know who has completed the most certification courses consistently, sort of month on month, which then counts towards the Mission Readiness Award, which is granted at the end of the year. We also look at the fitness challenge. Now, this is generated by the chief medical officer, and that looks a little bit like this. Once again, I've anonymized this image, taken out everybody's name except my own. So the chief medical officer will look through our two step tracking tools, which are the old one, count.it, which we will be probably phasing out by the end of this year, and the new and current one, which is called StrideKick, and they figure out which is the correct number to use, put those into another spreadsheet. Colonel Weaver says Colonel redacted. Yes, that's true. I wonder which colonel that might be. So the chief medical officer again will go through the list and see who has the highest number, and will produce this report, which tells everybody on board who has both participated in the fitness challenge for that month and also who has scored the highest amount. So these numbers are then again put into the crew evaluations spreadsheet. We just put the raw step numbers in there, and we can also then track who has done the most steps month on month. So we know who has done the most winning amount of steps for the year for award purposes at the end of the year. We also have the combat training challenge, which is not as well supported internally as some of the other challenges. So far this year, I've been the only one who's submitted any combat training hours, but that's fine. As long as there's somebody participating, there's a reason to continue running the challenge. Hopefully more people will be joining me soon. Colonel Hubert says, I'm looking into it. That's fantastic. Please do. Captain von Kerner says, does getting out of bed count as combat training? No, it does not. It is, however, the first step towards combat training, but there are several steps required after getting out of bed in order to qualify as combat training. Colonel Hubert says, I want to do Krav Maga. That is amazing. Please do that. Send videos. So once the combat hours are tallied, again, we have a winner for that month. There's no formal report that needs to be produced on that one at the moment, but once we get more active participants on a monthly basis, then that leader of that challenge, who is the chief security officer, will likely also start producing a report that looks something like this. So those numbers will then go back into the crew evaluations document, which can then determine who has generated the most combat hours. The linguistics challenge works in a similar way. This is done through Duolingo. The chief science officer produces a report that looks like this, which then tracks those numbers coming out of the Duolingo reporting system so that we know who has won the linguistics challenge any given month. Again, this one is anonymized. This is the one challenge that I don't consistently win every month, at least not yet, but that's fine. I can't win everything. Those numbers will then also go into the spreadsheet here, so we can determine who the winner is there. And those are the challenge numbers and how those work. We also have then the public service hours. We haven't yet covered our public service initiative in these briefings. I'm going to be doing a briefing specifically about the public service initiative at some point in the future. But in a nutshell, we encourage each member of the crew to engage in volunteer activities for some or other charity function outside of the Dauntless. So in addition to our Dauntless missions, we encourage everybody to volunteer somewhere. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be a Dauntless mission. It can, but it should be for an institution other than the Dauntless or Starfleet, some kind of organization that does something good for society. This is part of our standing order number 1. And when you have done so, when you've done some volunteering work, we invite you to include the number of hours that you've served doing that volunteer work in your crew report at the end of the month. So that's this one here, public service hours. You can list the number of hours you've worked at which institution, and that then goes into the spreadsheet here so we can keep track of who's done that. You'll notice that there's no column here for who has done the most because this is not competitive. Although we do keep track of the number of hours, we're not competing against each other in this one. It's just so we know if somebody had met the relevant threshold for this or that commendation or award or something like that, then we have the number of hours on file for that kind of thing. All of that data then goes into this report, which is the monthly crew evaluations report. So we can have a nice dashboard here of who has done what. So the commendations are, if you have won one of the challenges, then you are allocated the relevant commendation there. Also, if you've done something else especially meritorious during the month, then you might be given a separate commendation in that column that is at the commanding officer's discretion. You'll see that there are nifty color codes so that you can see clearly at a glance who has done what. We don't indicate in this summary who has done the most numbers here. So you'll notice that on the annual sheet here, we've got these color codes here. Whoever's done the most gets red, whoever's done the least gets green. We don't have that in this report. This is the sort of external facing report. Only the command staff sees these numbers. These color codes just help us to keep track of who is doing the most, but that's not relevant for this document here. And then we get to this column here, which is status. So the status is what comes out of this report. Captain von Krooner says red usually equals bad, lol. Yes, I suppose it does, but it's fine. As long as we appreciate the difference, then it's okay. Lieutenant Kimberly says, what about working in sales? Feels like a battlefield sometimes. Yes, sometimes working in sales can feel like a battlefield, but unless you're actually fighting with your customers, I wouldn't classify that as personal combat training. And Colonel Bear says red is command here. That's quite right. In this time period, red equals the command branch of service. Lieutenant Kimberly says, well, there are days. Yes, I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are. But that sounds more like a matter for the police than for the Dauntless Security Department. Right, so we're looking at the status column here of this mission report, and that is about what recommendations and what commendations come out of the report once it has been completed. So typically the thing that would come out of it is promotion. So again, we're looking at the promotion track here. We're looking to see which members have met the necessary requirements. Now, we did a whole video like this on ranks and promotions some time ago. I recommend you go and take a look at that one. So I'm not going to go into that in considerable detail, but by way of summary, in order to earn promotion to the next rank, there are some prerequisites that have to be met, and these are listed in two categories. You've got your mandatory requirements. In other words, you have to complete every single one of these in order to be eligible for your next rank, and then you have elective requirements. Each rank will have a number of these that have to be met. So you have a list to choose from, and in this case, you have to meet 6 out of these. So any 6 or even multiples of 1 is successful. Once you've completed the necessary number of requirements, then you are eligible for promotion, and you will probably be nominated for promotion, usually by your department head, but it can be by the command staff as we're completing the crew evaluations process at the end of the month. We'll nominate you for promotion, and then we will evaluate then and there if that promotion is warranted. And if we decide that it is, we will go through the process of granting you your promotion. You'll get a nifty certificate like this with your next rank on it. There's one other consequence that can come out of the crew evaluations, which is not a positive one, and that is, you might have noticed it at the bottom here, which is reprimands. Generally, we try to avoid any kind of negative feedback systems for any of our activities, but there is one circumstance which generates a negative feedback, and that is priority 1 missions. Priority 1 missions are the ones that are so important that they are mandatory for all personnel on board. And failure to report in is the one condition that can result in a negative feedback system within the Dauntless. So failure to report in means that firstly, you didn't attend a priority 1 mission, and secondly, you didn't excuse yourself from attending that priority 1 mission. So a priority 1 mission was scheduled, you were notified, you were invited, you were informed about it, and you didn't show up and you didn't let us know that you weren't coming. right? That is what we call failed to report in. And when that happens, unfortunately, we have to allocate a reprimand, and that is the failed to report in flag, which basically excludes you from any promotional opportunities for at least a year after that fact. That's something that should be actively avoided. And if you have a failed to report in on your record, you should be doing everything you can to try and um, uh, have that expunged from your record, to try and appeal the decision, or to make up for it, or to earn the trust of your crew again after you've let them down by having that fail to report in flag on your record. So that's the only negative situation where we might have, and that would be reflected in this report where it says under status, non-select means that you haven't been promoted this month. Promoted means you have been promoted. If you've been nominated for promotion to a higher authority, like for example a flag rank promotion, then instead of saying promoted here, it would say nominated. It can take up to a couple of months for those kinds of nominations to be processed by the executive committee. For myself, here at the top, it says not applicable because I have reached the top rank. Admiral is the highest. I can't go any higher, so I'm not eligible for promotion. That's not how it works. So for me, status is not applicable. And if anybody on this list had a failed to report in flag on their record, it would say not applicable for them as well, because they are also not eligible for advancement for that period. Then one more thing happens. So typically during the crew evaluations process, once that's been done, we will output this report. I'll take a screenshot of it. I'll clean it up so it looks a little bit cleaner. It looks a bit like that, and we'll post it then to the Discord bridge channel so everybody can see how everybody else is doing. We will include that information into the Dauntless MSR, the monthly status report, which is the report that goes to Starfleet Operations and the regional coordinator. They will also get a copy of this so they can see what we're up to. And then there will be a list of typically what we call triggered reassignments. So on board, everybody has a position that can be either a duty station or a standard position, and some of those are specific to members of a particular rank. The only time this really applies, well, there's two situations where this typically applies, and that is if you are an enlisted member. Let's say you are a crewman apprentice, and you have, during the course of this month, completed your officers training school at Starfleet Academy, which means that you are now eligible for commission up to an officer rank. If you were, say, a communications technician within the communications department, that is a rank for an enlisted member. So if you are promoted to an officer, that would then mean you should be reassigned as communications officer. It's the same position, it carries the same function, it just has a slightly better title, officer instead of technician. So that would be a triggered reassignment. If you are commissioned to an officer, you're promoted to an officer rank, you would be reassigned as a communications technician. That's the one circumstance in which that might happen. The other circumstance comes in when we're talking about lack of activity. This shouldn't be viewed as a negative feedback, although I suppose some people could look at it that way. We will also, as part of the crew evaluations process, we'll look through every single member of the crew and see when last they made contact with the rest of the crew. So that means they've either done something formal like submitting their crew report, or they've attended an away mission or just a regular mission, or they've been chatting on the Dauntless Discord or the Facebook group or anywhere like that. We can see when last we heard from that member. Maybe they responded to a private message from the department head or that kind of thing. It would be usually reflected in the departmental monthly status report, where the department head says, I've managed to make contact with these members of the team, and I failed to make contact with these members of the team. And we keep track of how long that has been happening, how many months it's been since we last successfully made contact with that missing member of the team. We keep a flag in the on your file. Basically, we keep a track: 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. As soon as that triggers the 6th month of no contact, that triggers a reassignment. That means, well, that tells us that for whatever reason you've decided that you've no longer interested, or not currently interested, in being actively a member of the Dauntless. You don't want to be active duty anymore. You will then be reassigned as a reserve member. That means that you have limited access to Dauntless systems, some access, but limited. It also reduces the administrative overhead on the command crew. You'll be removed from this list of active duty personnel so that we're not checking on your promotions every month, because it does take a fair amount of time, as you can see. And you'll be moved to a second list of reserves, which we can then check up on annually. If you are a reserve, a Dauntless reserve, you are welcome to return to active duty at any time. You will have received in your email when you were notified that you've been reassigned as a reserve, you'll have been sent a link to a form that you can complete to let us know that you are interested in returning to active duty. It allows you also to update your privacy preferences, and then you can come back onto this list again. That would be an active reassignment as opposed to a triggered reassignment. And once those triggered reassignments are complete, that usually means that we have finished our crew evaluations for the month. So that is a long and complicated manual process. Commander Haybeck, welcome. Good to see you there. Um, it happens every month and it's a lot of work. It's fairly manual. So if any members of the crew have any advice or ideas about building a way of automating some or all of this process, that would be amazing. Please submit an engineering proposal to the command staff so that we can look into building something like that. But it's fine. If it's manual, that's okay. That's part of the job. That's part of the responsibility that you take on when you are a chapter executive and or commanding officer, is doing this kind of work for everybody. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions internally, so I think we're probably going to call it there. Let me switch back to that. There we go. So as you can see, this is it's a lot of work to be a chapter commanding officer, and it involves constantly keeping an eye on every member of the crew to see what everybody is up to. It's not practical or desirable for me to be reaching out by private message to every single member of the crew to find out what each person is doing, which is why we have that reporting structure in place where everybody can report to the member directly above them, and then all of that information flows up the chain of command so that I'm looking at the least amount of information necessary in order to complete the crew evaluations process at month end. The entire senior staff, in one way or another, is involved in producing the information that this crew evaluations process is built on. So every member of that team is essential to the process of making sure that each and every one of us receives the appropriate recognition for the work that we've been doing. And if we haven't been doing any work, making sure that we are moved to the correct part of the ship to reflect that condition. Master Chief Kotze asks, how frequently are there errors in this process? Well, given how manual it is, errors do creep up. Will occasionally, for example, overlook a mission that was attended here or there. Perhaps a name was left off of a roll call by accident or something like that. There are redundancies built into the system so that we're triple checking as often as possible, or at least double checking every single item on the list. But that doesn't mean that errors can't creep in, and sometimes things are overlooked. That's simply the nature of the beast when we're looking at such manual systems. And even the portions that are automated are done so in a way that is, let's say, janky. Those automations don't always trigger, they don't always fire reliably, which is why we have to have even more redundancies to make sure that all of those things have happened the way they're supposed to. So yes, errors do creep in. I don't often hear complaints that things have been overlooked or missed, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It's just possible that people might not have noticed that it's happening. And if I missed it, then I obviously haven't noticed. All right, I think we're going to call it there. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here this afternoon. If you have any questions after the fact, please feel free to drop them in YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else that you might be able to get a message to me in, and we'll address it either in the comments thread there or perhaps in a future video.